Welcome to Something Like Therapy. We hope you enjoyed our last episode where we discuss the issue of codependency. Join us as we go through the final points and we begin to unfold ways that you might be stuck in the crazy cycle of codependency. Hope you guys enjoy.
Hey guys, welcome back. If you are binging and you just listened to last week's episode, we're continuing that one. So maybe welcome back isn't the right thing. You're just like, dude, I literally just heard you guys. But to us, it isn't. So welcome back from us.
Welcome back. We are...
You lost your breath? I take your breath away still, so that's cool.
Yeah, sorry. You took my breath away. We're back to cover the last 7 points that we began. Sorry, I am so not here today. I don't know what's going on.
We're just going to let it roll. We're not even going to restart. You guys know what we're talking about.
Man.
So
yeah,
what Jess is trying to say is that we're going to continue.
Yes.
This is part 2
of
the signs of codependency in a relationship. So I think we gave you 7 points last time. So we're here to finish off that list of signs that you may in fact be in a codependent relationship. So either the dependent one or the one that is dependent on the dependent one, I guess, however we phrased it last time.
I think it just comes down to being codependent.
Yeah, you're just dependent. So
whatever codependent looks like to you, that's what it is.
Yeah, we'll jump right into it and get those ones taken care of. And like I said, we'll start off on where we left last time. The last point we made, which thinking about it kind of retrospectively looking back, maybe we should have continued or at least hit that last point with it. But because the next point or the last one we did was you have abandonment issues. And we kind of discussed that. But the next point we wanted to bring up is you have trouble being alone, which someone who has abandonment issues is exactly that. They have a fear of being alone or someone leaving them alone. But definitely this one rings very, very true, I would imagine, with codependency. And that's probably a main reason as to why you are dependent on the other person in the relationship, is that you have this fear that if I'm not with this person, I'm not going to be able to be with anyone, or which we've heard, I'm sure you've heard people that are in these kinds of relationships say no, this person is the only person I can be with. They're the only one that understands me. They're the only one that gets me. Which, I mean, everyone's been in these kind of relationships, or everyone's been in a relationship to where you just become so comfortable with a person that it really does feel like that. Like, you're just little quirks about yourself, the way you respond to things, I don't know, that person just knows you so well because you guys have spent time together, obviously, and you're close. So you begin to create this kind of false narrative in your head, well, no, I will never be that close to someone. And obviously this is, with younger people or maybe people that haven't been in a lot of relationships where that whole, the whole feeling is still new. The relationship is, or just being in a serious long-term relationship is still new to them, to where, I've invested so much time, and, time may be relevant only in their world of what time is when, you look at it, people have been with someone 17, 20, 25 years, 50 years. But, whatever it is, your relationship is, that is everything. It's your world, which it should be. So again, you have a false narrative of believing no one else, you'll never be able to get that close to someone else. So you have that fear of if this ends up going to crap and we have to break up, or we do break up, I'm never going to have that again. So you have that fear of I'm going to end up alone, so.
Yeah. Number 8 is very much the fruit of number 7, where you have abandonment issues, and that leads to having trouble being alone, being comfortable with just yourself, because the alone part becomes almost like a trigger of well, I'm alone and there's no one here to either take care of me, to listen to me, to hear me. And the abandonment just becomes so noticeable, so highlighted, because you feel, again, alone. Um, and I want to say that a lot of the times, because you mentioned people in their younger age, their younger years, tend to kind of have this type of dynamic in the relationship where they have to do everything together, be together, 24/7. And if they're not together now with technology, they need to be texting in some way, shape, or form. They need to have a contact with this person, right? So I think a lot of times, if a particular person already has abandonment issues from a very young age, and they don't address them, then this leads to the fear of being alone. So what happens is that now you not only see this type of behavior or dynamic in the relationship at a very young age, or maybe in your teens or 20s, it will spill over into your 30s, your 40s, your 50s. You have people that are still, now into the, middle age, that still tend to have this type of codependent relationship because they never truly addressed the abandonment issues that they have. Yeah. So,
I mean, things that people go through, like childhood traumas, and any of the topics we've talked about or will talk about, like, they lead to just toxic relationships in general. When you don't address them, when you don't get the help and therapy that you need. And then also too, I wanted to also address, like we said, one where it was like, people that are in maybe younger or have newer relationships, or maybe or in their first long-term relationship, about the whole feeling like, well, I'll end up alone because no one else will ever get me the way that this person does. That could also be in, people that have had maybe, high school sweethearts and been together since they were 16, and now they're in their 40s and they get a divorce, and they're just like, how do I live? How do I, there's no way I can date. I don't even know how to date. No one's going to understand me, because they've only known one person their whole life. So, it could be older people and younger people that kind of have, again, that false narrative that they create. And then the thing is that being alone, like, I mean, not necessarily, like, if you have a fear of being alone doesn't mean you're a dependent person, because it's our natural instinct as human beings to want to be in a community, to want to be with someone, to want to be around someone. So I think it's natural to have a fear of being alone. And that's the whole thing, like with, if you go through self-care and self-help and all these things about finding inner peace, I believe you truly have inner peace when you are okay by yourself, when you can be alone, when you don't need to be talking to someone or be on social media or anything like that. You just have a calm and a serenity of just being by yourself. So it's something that all of us can work on, dependent or not. Like, it's something we all feel and go through. But I was just thinking that.
Yeah, no, and it's kind of like what I said with the being comfortable with just yourself, with your own thoughts. And if for some reason those feelings of abandonment or those thoughts of abandonment come up, you're comfortable enough to feel them and to process them and to, to work through them. And that's what happens with people that are in a codependent relationship. They don't want to feel that. So they need that blanket, which is the other person, a distraction. It could even be like a friendship, where you're just like, oh my God, I'm feeling this way and I don't know what to do. And honestly, there's a difference between having someone there to, to vent, to like process, to talk, and, versus having someone there that you need to walk you through every single step of your day. Like, it's very, very, very different. So the dangers of just being in a codependent relationship or friendship could really, it causes a lot of harm within relationships. And I think too, for the person that is in a relationship with someone that is codependent, you really need to ask yourself, why are you making yourself readily available for this person all the time? What is it that's bringing you back into the situation that's keeping you in this cycle and that's keeping it going?
Yeah.
You know, because there's some form of addiction there also that is causing you to almost kind of enable this this type of behavior, you know.
And I don't think I'm pretty sure 100% you're not saying that when you're in a relationship you got to keep your head on a swivel and like always be looking for signs of this and that of like what's wrong. No, that's not what we're trying to say. But like the thing is that being a responsible and healthy adult, or having a healthy relationship, is to keep your eyes open to just signs that come up within yourself or within your partner, to where you see like, okay, this isn't good. Like we've kind of changed, or something's happened here, or maybe we've never recognized it before, but we've always kind of put ourselves in this kind of repetitive, toxic trait that we have. Because you always want to continue to better yourself and to continue to better your relationship and find ways to help your partner better themselves, by, again, like we talked about what I think was number one, like open and honest discussion about like, hey, this seems off or this doesn't feel right. And noticing those kind of signs or symptoms that pop up and say like, hey, why, have you ever thought like why we're like this? Or do you feel comfortable with that? Maybe I don't feel comfortable with that. And have those discussions about it. Because if you don't, it's just going to get worse and worse and worse. So.
Then you're just kind of like, you're stuck in assumption of like, well, maybe this is how this person likes it, or maybe, they think this is how I like it. So yeah, for sure. I feel like number 9 and number 10 could kind of go into one.
Well, what I was going to say on 9 maybe doesn't, like, unless it does, I don't know. But let's see. Go ahead. What are 9 and 10, and then we'll discuss.
So number 9, you feel lost when you're not with the other person. And number 10, you have low self-esteem.
Okay.
Which I feel like 7, 8, and 9 kind of.
They all kind of relate.
Kind of relate. But you feel lost when you're not with the other person. Okay, I'll give a perfect example, a personal example. When I was going through a whole lot with my mental health, I came down with like really bad, debilitating anxiety, and I couldn't be alone. I felt like I couldn't be alone. It got really bad to the point where, Derick had to take some time off of work so he can be with me. And very quickly that became like my crutch, like my comfort zone, where I needed you to be there like at all times. And it ended up kind of spilling over into my personal life, like my outside personal life outside of the house, where if we were going to hang out with friends, I needed you to be there. And I very quickly became very dependent on you being my safe place, which there's nothing wrong with that until it is wrong. Because I thought that you were like not only like my safe place at home, but now outside of the house, to where if you weren't there, I didn't know how to talk to people. I didn't know how to just, be outside in the world. It's like panic and anxiety like really kicked in. And I know that's a little bit of an extreme situation, but because I was obviously going through something. But I think we can do that even if you're not going through anxiety or, whatever it is that you might be struggling with. Like, we can make someone be our everything in a way that becomes a very heavy load for the other person to carry. And before we know it, it's either you do something with them or you just don't do it at all. And that's kind of what happened with me, where if you weren't like at my arm's reach, I just would freak out, and I probably didn't like really say it a lot because I was obviously kind of embarrassed because I've always been so independent, and I could be out with my friends and I was fine, but it got to the point where I couldn't.
Yeah. So,
I noticed that really started to just affect even just me going out with my friends. Like, everything was, with you. Well, can Derick come? Like, and which, again, I mean, being a married couple, which a lot of married couples, and I think this is what you were touching on, right before we brought up this point, where sometimes they create this dynamic where like, well, we do everything together or we just don't do it at all. And I'm not saying that that's wrong, but I do feel that we are still individuals. And I think we talked about this in the last episode. Like, we are still individuals. We're still our own person. Me as a woman, like, I need to have female relationships and have conversations with them that I wouldn't have with you. And it's not because I'm keeping anything from you. It's just that
you just want to talk about me. That's what it is.
It's just that we're girls, and there's things that I'm sure you have zero interest in, and that's okay. I'm not gonna freaking bash you for that, but we're still individuals, and vice versa with you. You're still a guy, and you want to have guy conversations with other guys. But I feel like sometimes, especially in like the marriage community, or even if you're not married, you're just a couple, you create this like, almost this identity where, again, I'm repeating myself from what we talked about in the first episode, where you're literally just this one cluster, and this cluster has to go everywhere together. And I feel that when you lose yourself in that way, you do kind of begin to almost kind of lose connection with each other, because you no longer can really know yourself without this person, and you kind of begin to lose yourself. I feel. I'm sure other people don't feel that way. Some people really. We had a couple of friends that were like, they did everything together with their spouse. And if we ever mentioned like, hey, let's have a girls' night or a guys' night, like it was a thing. Like I could tell it was something they weren't comfortable with.
Yeah.
And I'm not bashing their relationship. I'm just saying that for me personally, I don't think that would work, because I feel like I'm still, my own person. And even as someone that was, again, using my husband like as a crutch, I knew that was very unhealthy, and I knew that I couldn't keep that going, because it was going to create some kind of friction between you and I.
Yeah. I mean, because I looked at it and I mentioned, like, I don't feel like they go the same, or they go together, but they can, is because kind of like what you started to say, or you did say in the beginning of like, there's been a couple of times, or I mean, a good amount of times where we've done stuff separate, and we mentioned to each other, like there was the time, I think you went to like a festival or a concert out of state. And then there was the time that I took a trip with a friend, and we went to like Arizona for spring training. And we both kind of agreed, like we came home, it was separate times, whatever, but we both said like, it does feel weird to like be out, like travel, take a long car trip or be on a plane or whatever, just be out and then not have you there. Because it just, because we do so much stuff together, it just, we think we even might have said, like, felt like a little lost, like kind of like just off, which that is perfectly, I would, understandable and perfectly fine, because that's kind of how you should feel. Like, that's your spouse or that's your partner. Like, you guys do everything together. So it should feel off. I think it becomes toxic when, like you mentioned, like debilitating, where no, I physically can't go. Like I already know, like I have a panic attack or something. I just, I can't, I just freak out. That's when it's like, okay, maybe we should take a step back and analyze, a little bit as to what is that? Like, that's not healthy. Because anywhere, I mean, I'm sure you guys have heard from, hundreds of thousands of times from any like relationship, self-help or relationship help books or whatever, that exactly what you said, you need that time apart. Like, you need to have guy time, you need to have girl time, you need separate lives, to an extent. Like, obviously, if you're just always out with your friends and she's always out with her friends, and that's the majority, and every now and then you guys do stuff together, yeah, again, it's balance. Balance is everything in life. But having that time is necessary. So yeah, when you, like the statement, you feel lost when you're not with that person, there's the healthy side of it. Like, yeah, because we're just so used to each other. When I'm going somewhere, it just feels weird. Like, even to go to the store by myself feels weird. Like, we're always at the store together, is one thing. But to like not be able to do something because you suffer from anxiety when you're not by that person, yeah, that's when it's like, yeah, that's not good. And having the low self-esteem, I mean, you kind of were going into it. Yeah, that's definitely, I would imagine, can be a cause of that, because, and maybe that's what causes the dependency, in the sense of like, I only feel confident in myself, or I only feel strong, or I only feel like I can express my opinion or safe when I'm with this person, and then when they're not there, I don't. Yeah, that's you know, a big part of that could be low self-esteem. You don't have confidence in yourself to take care of yourself, provide for yourself, to just get through your day-to-day, unless that person is there to help you as your crutch, you know. So
yeah, and goes back to what I was saying with being alone with your thoughts. And you, I think you did say this, where like being alone doesn't necessarily mean being alone like no one's there, but not being by their side, not being by the side of the person that you're in a relationship with. So you feel alone because you're so used to being with them at all times, right? So to sit and just be okay with the uncomfortable thoughts of like, or you know, what are they doing? If you have trust issues, this might be something where low self-esteem kicks in, where, well, what are they doing, and why haven't they reached out to me, and why they haven't they called me, you know? Or even like, I related to the anxiety, like, oh my god, why isn't he here? And I feel like I'm in a panic, and you know, it gets to the point where that becomes very, very toxic, and it's just a lot for the other person to handle.
I feel like it's
too much.
Worse for people in relationships that maybe suffer from that kind of, you know, anxiety or trust issues or whatever, because it's just, you know, we live in a society of instant, like, texting, messaging, DM, like, all of it, to where you should be at my fingertips. Like, before it was like, you know, go back like 20 years, it's like we all didn't have phones. It was like, yeah, you might go a whole... oh my god, heaven forbid, I went a whole half day, I didn't talk to my girlfriend or something, like, or talk to my wife, like, yeah, that's just because I was at work or I was out, you know, like, but nowadays, you know, there's some people that I know where it's just like, you're with them and they're just texting, like, and you don't even have to ask, like, who are you texting, like, you just automatically know, and it's like, wow, you can't, like, do they need that reassurance that you're not, what, you haven't ran away to Mexico, or like, what are you doing? You know what I'm doing. Like, this is, I went out to do this. Why would you, like, it's just, I don't know. So that's where you get into that dependency of, like, I at least need that reassurance that I text them, like, hey, just thinking about you, or just to know, like, they're alive. Where, and like I said, I feel like it's gotten worse for relationships in our day and age, because again, it's just, there's so many ways to be at someone's fingertip.
Now we got our watches. You can't even say, well, my bad, I didn't have my phone on me.
Yeah, you had your watch.
You have your watch that freaking alerts you and lets you know, like, what, you know, what you can't, and now you can respond on your watch. So it's like,
you see all these, like,
no reason, no
memes
excuse.
and TikToks where it was like one where it was a wife, like, I'm watching my favorite show, and it's just the wife sitting in front of the TV with the tracking, the monitoring of where her husband is at. And then, or the other one was like, wow, just watching my husband drive home from work when I didn't even get a text that he's on his way. Like, wow, what's he up to? Like, what?
Yeah.
Exactly.
And these are jokes, right? But
yeah. And that
very real.
Yeah, that dips
people's
into
lives.
Trust issues, which this, you know, codependency and trust go hand in hand. So it's like, you can be a codependent person that does have trust issues or doesn't. Like, I would imagine if you are codependent and you have trust issues, it's like, oof, that's like a double.
And let me say this, that if you don't feel some kind of way when you're spying on your spouse or your significant other, then you got some issues.
Yeah.
Because,
like, if that's the norm for you,
I'll just say that's kind of sick. Like, that's kind of sick in the head, and that's not okay. And, you know, I don't say this to, like, oh my gosh, like, I'm not that kind of person, but you had taken a road trip, you know, for work a few weeks ago, and you came back really, really late. And we were talking, I knew where you were at, but I was really afraid of you going down this road, that you had to travel to come back home. It's a horrible, very dangerous road.
Yeah.
So, we had talked, and I was waiting for you to come home, And I went on the because obviously we share our location, and I was about to fall asleep. I was like, okay, I need to know at least if he's close by, like I can go to sleep and I don't have to be worried. And I looked on your location, and it showed that I think you were like an hour away or something. And I don't know why I just felt so guilty, like looking at your location as if I was spying on you. And I thought, like, oh my gosh, like I would never spy on you. It was a genuine, I was really scared because it was so late already, and I know you had been driving for hours. So if you don't get that feeling of like, I don't want to say guilt, but more of just like, this isn't a normal thing to be watching your spouse where he's at all times, or where she's at, whatever. If you don't get that feeling, and you almost kind of get off on just watching where they're at, like
having that control,
that's
I guess.
very, very scary. And I don't think there's something about privacy that I think no matter how long you've been with someone, that we have to respect. And I'm not saying that this is a get out of jail, free card to be, deceiving or to lie or to keep secrets. I'm not saying that, but there is a boundary that I think we need to, we just, you don't need to say it. We just need to be, very honest with each other. If I have a question about maybe if you get a text message, I'm not going to go and try to find, because obviously your laptop gets your text messages, right? I'm not going to go and scroll through your message. I'm going to ask you.
Yeah, that's...
And then if I feel at that point that you're not being truthful, then I'm going to take it a step further. But I'm going to let you know, hey, I'm not really trusting the situation right now.
Yeah.
You and I don't have that kind of relationship. We don't have that. We have in the past, like this is way in the past when we first, got together, which that's normal. It's just people, you're paranoid when you first get with someone.
Younger too, yeah.
Exactly. But if that behavior continues, and my self-esteem is really affected by that, then I really need to communicate that.
And this doesn't speak to, those that are in relationships with people that have, addictive or overcoming addiction and things like that, right, to where, they openly ask their spouse or their partner, I want you to be my accountability partner. Or maybe they get it from a friend or something. Hey, I need you to hold me accountable. So, and there's different things that go on phones and laptops to where, that person who you have an agreement with can see what you're seeing and kind of go through your stuff. But again, it's having that open dialogue with whoever, if it's within your relationship with your partner, like, hey, I struggle with this, so I'm asking you to do this. And that's completely different.
Situation.
Yeah, that's a completely different thing, And again, I would hope even with that, because, overcoming addiction it never stops. It's for the rest of your life, it's ongoing, but you still strive to get stronger and stronger and stronger to where you need less and less, like you feel that you need less and less, accountability with it. I'm doing this and I'm strong in it. And again, I at least believe, in my life, like I don't have addictions to things that at least, like physically or mentally, drain me.
Football.
Fantasy football. Oh God, we're so close, guys. It is less than 2 weeks away. Anyways, but I'm saying...
addicts know they're addicts?
Exactly, right? But what I'm saying is... maybe it doesn't. Maybe for those people that suffer from addiction and need accountability, they need that same accountability forever. And that's good. You are being mature about it. You have an open dialogue with your partner as to what your needs are and everything. So that's perfectly good. And we're not speaking to that. We're speaking to the other ones that it's just a matter of like, because you have issues with trust, you're just gonna track your your boyfriend or your girlfriend like that, and you just do it behind their back. Like that's when it always comes back to honest, open dialogue. So
right, and this leads into the number 11 point where you often cancel plans with others to be with them. Yeah,
that's the same with like not you feel lost when you're not with them. So like I can't go hang out with the boys, and I'm just gonna say something came up because I know we're going somewhere that she can't go, so I'm just going to say I need to cancel for this because I don't want to make it awkward. But it's
or I cancel my plans, because then that leaves a window open for you to do something with somebody else. Meaning if I have plans with my friends, then you might make plans with your friends. So I just cancel
so that I would have to cancel.
You don't have that opportunity to cancel. This is how girls think. This is how girls think.
Man, you guys play the long con, huh? You guys go deep in it.
I mean, this is how girls think. And honestly, I'm not going to say just girls, but, this is how people with insecurity, with low self-esteem, with, fear of being alone, with abandonment issues, that's what they do, And I've been there. I'm not going to sit here and say that I've never done something like that. I've been there. I was in a relationship before you, and there was a lot of cheating, a lot of lies, a lot of toxic behaviors. And honestly, in the beginning of our relationship, it was hard to not compare our relationship with my past relationship. So it took a lot of practice to not treat this relationship the same way that I was treating my past relationship. So that was a lot of relationships in there. But, I just feel that it takes a lot of self-awareness and admitting to yourself that, hey, even though this is something that I'm used to doing, it's not okay to do. It's not okay to manipulate something, to try to make excuses for why you need to be with them at all times. There comes a point in your life where you really have to ask yourself, why am I, behaving this way, and why do I need to have this person with me all the time?
Yeah. It's understanding your value. And that's what a lot of people, especially when you're young, you don't value yourself, or you don't understand your value. And, I'm sure everyone, my high school relationship, same thing, where we went back and forth on a lot of trust issues and jealousy, and it was just bad, but it's again, when you're young, everything's still so new. And, you kind of go through these things to get life experience. But then there's people that kind of never get out of it. They're still, they're in their 20s or 30s, and they still have high school relationships because they never grew as a person. And then they found someone else that never grew as a person. So they're kind of just stuck in that, everything that we've been discussing, needing each other. And they tend to have codependent relationships. But, again, it's just all about going through the experience of being in, I'm not saying you have to have multiple relationships or have all these relationships in order to grow. You can be in one or two and just gain from it, because you go through whatever you have to go through during that relationship, and you learn from it, And even if you stay in that relationship, you guys learn together and you grow together. So yeah, definitely.
Yeah. It's, what you said about just knowing your value, knowing your worth. It's such a beautiful thing to discover that, because it goes right into the next point of, you can't set boundaries. I think when you can understand your worth and you can value yourself, your boundaries will go up. You, without even trying, you'll just know that, hey, this is not okay. This behavior, what we've been doing, it's really bad, And when you don't have enough self-love, enough awareness, enough care for yourself, you have a very hard time setting boundaries.
Yeah.
And that will show across the board, not just in your, personal relationship as far as your intimate relationships, but this will spill over into everything.
Yeah,
this will spill
work,
over into
everything.
The cashier that you encounter at the store. She can say something, this is going to sound stupid, but they can offer you to sell you something, you don't need it, and you just don't know how to say no, and you're just like, okay, I mean, it sounds so dumb, but once you can understand the power of your yeses and your nos and how far they can really go, and using them wisely, it's going to sound dramatic, but you can take over the world.
Yeah.
You literally will be able to feel so empowered And you'll know that there's things that are not okay, and you will set that hard boundary no matter how hard it is to implement that, and how the other person's going to be affected. You're not going to compromise what it is that you know is important to you.
And your partner should be the number one person in your life to where it's the most comfortable to set boundaries. And a lot of the times, you know, just because, I don't know, as men and women, like, we have this idea of our relationship, like it's this weird foreign, like, oh, like, you know, because, and that's because you guys probably don't have open dialogue. You don't discuss things. I guess what I'm trying to say is, like, your partner should be the person that you're the most closest to, and that you have the ability to openly share and express your feelings, your wants, your desires, what you like, what you don't like. But so many times you see people that are like, you see, like, you know, whatever, you see a person, this guy or girl, and they're so confident, and like they don't let anyone get over on them. They speak like, nope, I'm standing my ground. It may be someone from work or maybe just a friend, and you just think like, oh man, they're just they have so much confidence in themselves, and they're not cocky or anything, but they know who they are, and they know their value, and you think like, oh man, their relationship must be so great. Then you come to find out that they just have such a rocky or broken relationship, because when they're around their partner, be it for whatever reason, they just don't have that same value or that same confidence. And they just, because it's like, it's so much harder to talk to my wife, or it's so much harder to just, you know, bring this up and discuss this with my husband. And it's like, why? That should be the number one person that you feel the most comfortable with. So yeah, a lot of the times, you know, you're able to set boundaries at work or with friends, but then you can't tell your spouse that I really don't like this. I don't like when we do this. Or, you know, even if it's like intimacy in sex, like what I like for sex, what I don't like for sex, when I want sex,
what's
when I
safe
don't.
Word?
Yeah, exactly. What's your safe word? Like, we don't talk about those things. Like, you don't talk about those things. How do you have sex with your partner, but you guys don't talk about sex? Like, how does it happen then? It's just like you trip and fall and land in there? Like, how does it come up? Like, and that's, you know, obviously
that'll be our next episode.
Yeah, that's
guys.
A whole other episode.
That'll be our next episode.
A whole other episode. Because I literally I found something about, like, that whole thing, initiating sex. So that might be our next episode. But anyways, going with, like, setting boundaries in your relationship, that's key. And that's just, like, a key for, like, having just a healthy overall, not something in a dependent relationship, just in a normal, healthy relationship, being able to set boundaries with your partner. So. And
that goes into our next point. You feel trapped in the relationship. So when you don't have healthy boundaries, and you can express yourself, and you have very, very poor communication, you really do feel trapped. And it makes you feel like you have to almost kind of become another person, you know, to be able to be in this relationship. So it's either you fake it, or you just, you know, you bail out and without even any explanation, you know. So, and most people, especially someone that's codependent, because they rather fake it than be alone. So, you know, the chances of them bailing out are very, very slim. So they'll fake it and they'll stay in the relationship, and then they'll feel just trapped. Like there's nothing else. Well, I'm not going to find anyone that's really going to understand me, or I've been in this for too long, or I've put in too much time. And you know, there's so many people that are in relationships that and they've been together for years. And you know, we were just having a conversation with someone, and we told them, within a blink of an eye, before you know it, it's 10 years later, and you're still in the same situation. And this could be, again, this doesn't have to necessarily just, you know, play in a part in a relationship, intimate relationship. This could be a friendship. This could be a job. This could be religion. This could be... Yeah,
you could be trapped in your relationship with your religion. You could be trapped in a codependent relationship with your religion, in your church, in your congregation. Or like you said, like at a job too.
At a job, you know, where you just can't say no. And, you know, before you know it, it's just been so many years. And now you just feel like there is no other way. This is it. This is my life. You know, and what are you going to do?
I would say that with, bringing it back to like the relationship, maybe the person that, like we said, you're both dependent, because the dependent one and then the one that, gets depended on, they kind of get dependent on that person depending on them, right? But like, I would say more so for the person that gets being dependent on, maybe they make that realization like, wow, this is really unhealthy. The person that I'm with just, they're like, they can't do anything unless I'm here. I have to help them with everything. And like, we've tried to maybe like separate, and it's just ended bad, like with whatever. And they can feel trapped, because then they just like, well, they begin to like either feel a guilt or a shame for even wanting to step away, because it's like, this person needs me, and like, that person's always been there for me, and like, how am I just gonna leave? Like that's called feeling trapped. And if it's worse if you're with someone that understands that you may be feeling that or going through that, and because they're so dependent on you, begin to manipulate things to where it's like, now it goes into like gaslighting, and it's like, it can get very, very ugly. But feeling trapped in any relationship, and again, like we said, intimate, friendship, work, religion, whatever, it's hard, because you kind of have to fight off, like you have this gut feeling like, I don't like this. That's like the initial like foundation. I don't like this. And what begins to eat at you or come at you from all sides is like, well, maybe it's because of this, or have you looked at yourself, like, or maybe you're doing this, and it's like all these voices in your head, and that's just like your guilt, your shame, your ego, just like nagging you to not truly express and be who you're supposed to be, And anyone that knows the ego obviously knows it's the antagonist against your inner peace, like, because it doesn't want you. It has control of you, how you think. And if you ever feel exactly how you really feel and express that, then you begin to kill your ego. So of course it's going to attack you. So
you get trapped in the God complex.
Yeah.
Where you become the savior. You become the person that this other person cannot be without, and
if you're a martyr, then you love it, because it's just like, oh, I'm strong for both of us.
There's something so narcissistic about people that are martyrs. Like,
anyone that tells you everything they have to do
is just pretty incredible. And honestly, I can speak from experience in this area, where there's been friendships that I had a really hard time walking away from, because I'm like, well, who's gonna tell them what to do? Who's gonna tell them, what? And honestly, I had no freaking business, because my life was a mess. And it's like, what's the point of having all this information when I can implement it in my own life? So it's you get stuck in that God complex, and the problem with that is that you get to a point where you cannot maintain that, and it'll eventually, the relationship will start ripping at the seams. It'll just fall apart. And now you have two people that are not able to not only not save themselves or each other, but they can't see out of the situation at all.
Yeah.
It's just, they just kind of, put their what is it, the white flag up, like, I surrender, I give up, but yet they still stay in it. And
they kind of just give up.
They give up on
trying
everything
to make it better, and they're just like, "Well, I'm just gonna be in it now." Like they just accept. Well, I guess this is just what my relationship's gonna be, and it's like, that's
and I've seen
a horrible acceptance.
So many people, and we've seen.
I've seen
people that are close to me being that,
friends and family,
very
where
sad.
It's been a marriage. Or just a relationship, and it's been for years, and it's like, wow. And again, I think we discussed it, where we feel like we've never been told by these specific individuals, but it's like they've had to have conversation, like it had to come up, like at some point through their relationship, like, this isn't right, this isn't good, and like maybe they tried to work on it and it just didn't work, and it's just like, but like there's just no way that they couldn't have seen it. But unfortunately, there are just individuals that because it's hard to see your toxic traits. You can always see it in other people. For sure. You can see it in I'm sure there's things about us that people are like, but you guys are kind of like this sometimes, and you guys are like this. Trust me, you're probably saying it right now wherever you're listening. Like, dude, I know Derick. Like, shoot, he's blah blah blah. But so and I can 100% agree. Like, it's easier to see it in other people. and in other individuals, but it's hard to look in the mirror and be like, damn, I'm like that, or I need to work on that, or we need to work on that. So trust me, guys, we are not in any way perfect. We're not even close to perfect. No one is. And that's another thing to always remember, even if it's not just in dealing with codependent relationships, just in relationships in general, never compare your relationship to anyone else's. Like a friend, like I always have a friend that talks about their spouse or someone at work or whatever, and it's just like, oh, why isn't my spouse like that, or why isn't it? It's like, what is it? Comparison is the death of joy. Like, it just, you will never.
Yeah, it's a thief of joy.
Yeah, because you'll always be comparing. So never compare yourself. But yeah, I don't even know how I got down that rabbit hole.
But I want to say something in regards to that, where the comparison, and it's so true, because what works for us isn't necessarily going to work for someone else. And for example, maybe someone that's been in a marriage and they've been cheated on. They have certain boundaries that we don't, and they have to have those boundaries because it's a safeguard for their relationship.
And again, open dialogue as to why they both agree on those boundaries.
Exactly. The only thing that I want to say is to always, I'm not going to say always, but try to periodically have open conversations about, okay, is this safeguard still working for us? Is this boundary still, is it still necessary? Because you guys maybe have outgrown that boundary.
Or maybe it's now becoming an issue. Like the boundary that used to work for you guys is becoming something that is causing resentment.
Exactly. And it's making this person feel trapped. And there's honestly no need to have this specific boundary, because there's so much growth in the relationship now that you have outgrown that boundary. So to have that communication, to talk and say, hey, this worked for us, I don't know, a year ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, we're somewhere completely different now. What can we do? Like, what can we adjust here to make both of us not only still feel secure, but, seen and heard and understood, So
exactly.
Again, every relationship is going to look different, because there's certain things that you and I, and this is one thing that I always say, no matter how I feel about the church and all that, but going to marriage class really showed us a whole lot about our relationship in areas that we needed certain boundaries, areas that we needed to, we would have never talked about if we wouldn't have gone to that class, because there was things that did bother me. And I always felt kind of dumb bringing them up until it became a topic in one of the classes. And I'm like, oh, wait, no, we should talk about this,
Yeah, I mean, we both have said it before, and we'll always agree on it, that, like, again, whatever our experiences and how things turned out with our church, we'll never regret the years that we got from being in marriage class, because exactly, mirroring exactly what you said about found so much found so much about myself and my role in our marriage, and just like the importance of it and the importance of different aspects of our relationship. Like, it was a lot. So definitely opened our eyes to a lot of things
too that were like, okay, that's a little too old school. we're not gonna do all that. But there's some value in some of the things that we learned, and you take what works and you leave what doesn't. That's the benefits of having, like, I don't know, some kind of common sense or wisdom where you don't not everything you hear, even on this podcast, obviously, not everything we say or guys.
Everything on this podcast is 100% true, and you to the T, you freaking follow it.
And you have the option, you have the choice.
And like you said, what works for people, even what works for the most healthiest, like, relationship, marriage, and they're authors of, like, books on codependency in a relationship, or books on how to have a happy marriage. They may have things that are like, follow these 10 steps and you'll have a happy marriage. Like you said, it doesn't work for everyone. You get their 10 steps, and maybe you follow 3 of them that really help your marriage, and the other 7 you're just like, I don't have any need for those. So it's like self-help, and like self-help books and podcasts and going to seminars. It's a buffet. You just pick from what helps you, and like interpret it in your way of like how you can actually execute that in your relationship and maybe alter it. Maybe this is the groundwork for it, but then we also did this, or maybe we tried this, and that really helped us. Then do it. Whatever helps.
I agree, 100%.
The next one, let's skip. I mean, we'll say it, but I feel like it just goes with the whole thing that we talked about with texting and needing that.
Yeah, having that constant communication. Yeah,
it says
you feel anxious when you don't hear from them.
Yeah, so that's the whole okay, I may be out with my friend and I text them and they didn't respond back. What are they doing? I don't know. They're probably out with their friend like they said they were gonna be, so that's what they're doing.
I can kind of almost relate to this one also, where you can't make decisions on your own. It goes back to the first episode that we did.
With the tomato.
Yeah,
exactly.
Where,
I have now anxiety coming home from Stater Brothers aisle 8 because what if I got the wrong spaghetti sauce because you didn't answer?
And to have that type of anxiety, I know we laugh at it, but no, people really do.
Oh no, it's real.
They cannot make any moves, any decisions, nothing without this person, having some kind of say or just hearing from them. Just hearing their voice alone gives them that okay, now I can go on. That's
a codependency, you that's a root codependency issue that you need to get help for or help with.
And I think it's a lot more common than people would probably want to admit.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, again, for example, what I was, telling you guys about with you being out on the road and me waiting for you to get home. I mean, I know, again, that's a little bit of extreme, but...
I also want to add that you did not wait up. You were pretty much asleep when I got home.
I was not.
Horrible.
I was barely falling asleep. But, I mean, this could have been a different situation where maybe you were out with your friends and I, couldn't go to sleep until I heard from you, or, you called me just to let me know whatever, where you're at. Some people cannot function unless they know your every single move, every single step. And it's a real thing, and again, like I said, you being out on the road, I was worried about, making sure you were safe. It's not, that's the healthy, type of anxiety, I guess you can say, where you should have
that for your
spouse,
for their safety.
But it could have been a completely different scenario if you were out with your friends and I needed to know where you were at. I just needed to know, and that's the very unhealthy. Mm-hmm. So,
sure.
Just want to give that example. The next one, you have a history of codependent or abusive relationships.
Yeah.
This goes back to where the first episode at the end of it, we talked about how easily something like this can become very toxic and can lead to not only mental abuse, but even go into physical abuse, because the level of codependency varies. Okay, so there's almost different levels. You can be at level 1 where you're just, for example, with me, when I had anxiety, I needed you by my side. Would I have ever gone violent? No, I don't think so. I mean, I really, unless I became mentally insane, then maybe, but I would say that's almost kind of like a level 1 where it's just more because I'm scared, and I had other things going on. We can go into a level 2 where now you become verbally abusive and you're calling and you're, making this person feel guilty for them
demanding that they be
demanding, yes, and not respecting their boundaries, or there's their personal space where you start going into and digging into their personal, information and phone or whatever, text. And then you go into the third level of where it becomes violent now, where now you're physically trying to restrain them, where you're mentally abusing them.
Yeah, you can't leave me, and you physically stop them from leaving.
Or you manipulate the situation so far that you now are making this person feel completely trapped.
Yeah.
And this is how far codependency can go. And if we don't address it, if we don't talk, if we don't communicate, if we don't set boundaries, if we don't work on ourselves, if we don't deal with our abandonment issues, any of us can fall into that.
That's exactly what I was going to say. I kind of said it earlier, to where any of these topics that we bring up, I
guarantee every person has done one of these.
Yeah.
And not one individual has not done at least one.
Exactly. And that's what I'm saying, is like, so many things that we can go through when we're growing up, things that we could like actually go through, or maybe we see our parents or brothers and sisters or close friends go through. All these things that just influence and affect how we grow up, it stays in us. And again, if you go through trauma and you don't seek help for it, you don't express it, and you don't talk to someone about it, it just will lead to many of these topics that we talk about, like people pleasing and codependency, and all the vast things that other topics we've talked about. It will lead to these things. So again, like, if you maybe weren't in a codependent relationship before, but you saw like your mom go through it with your dad, or your dad go through it with your mom, or whatever, or you have an older brother and sister and you saw them be someone who is dependent or in a dependent relationship, that like your brain, when it's still growing up from age 0 to like early 20s, like it's a sponge. You just you hang on to these things, and you don't even realize, like, oh my gosh, this thing had a really big impact on my life. I don't realize that I think this way because of so and so, or because of this. And it sucks because, like, unless something happens, you won't like take the time to make that connection. Like, hey, I feel like I'm this way because of this. Maybe I need to like talk about that. Like, and you see so many people that go through it, and they're just oblivious to it. And it sucks even more is that when you know someone that does realize, like, yeah, they've talked about, this is the trauma I went through, and I'm probably messed up from it, but I'm not going to do anything about it. And it's like, oh my gosh, it's even worse. But yeah, there's so many things where you've gone through, and then you don't address that, and it just then trickles over into your next relationship, and then your next relationship. And you get the people that are oblivious to it, that don't even see the pattern. And then you get the people that do see the pattern, and then they just choose to not like want to fix it.
And a lot of the reasons why people are in a codependent relationship is really because of the avoidance, just avoiding the uncomfortable feelings, avoiding the reality of things, accepting, maybe something that happened, healing from it, processing it. And they become very, I want to say it can go either way. It can either be the person that is dependent on one, or be the person that is being dependent on. They can both be in a situation of avoiding something. Avoiding healing, avoiding from seeing like the situation for what it really is. So seeing the relationship for what it really is. So you kind of just engulf yourself in this person's needs. And at the end of the day, it's like you said, and I think we're kind of repeating ourselves now, but it really, I think one of the big signs of a healthy individual is being okay with being alone. There has to be a period in your life where you have to be alone and be okay with being alone. Because if you don't have that time to just process and to feel all those feelings of, or emotions of aloneness, then how can you really get to know yourself? Like, all the dark thoughts that you have, all the, just crazy things that you might think, like things that we're afraid of thinking, things that we're afraid of accepting about ourselves. Like, you're not really ever going to get to know yourself. And I'm not saying that you need to be alone until you know yourself, but I feel like be alone enough to be able to at least hear those things. Yeah. And maybe throughout time you begin to process them. And sometimes there is times where you get with someone, you connect with someone where they help you see those things. But that's just an added bonus. It's not their responsibility to show you anything. It's just kind of something that they do that maybe light something up in you and you realize like, oh my gosh, I am this way. Or, you know, like something just comes up as a little light bulb. And that usually happens when you're in a healthy relationship or in a really shitty relationship. Because sometimes you see the dysfunction that you have within you in somebody else.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh my gosh, that's a mirror of me. And
yeah. It's funny. I mean, like, it's a funny comedy movie, of course, but it's the movie I Love You, Man, where Paul Rudd is someone who's like addicted to his fiance and only knows her, doesn't have any guy friends, doesn't have any other friends. He does everything with her. And he realizes he needs guy friends, whatever. So he meets Jason Segel. And I always remember that scene, and it kind of goes with what we're talking about, what you're saying, where he tells them, like, he's like, oh, so how did you guys meet? And like, oh, I forget, he tells her, like, I met her through this, and I had just gotten out of a relationship, and then I got into a relationship with her. And he tells him, like, oh, so there's no lads between the vag.
Wow.
Which, it's crude way to say it, but it's his point he's trying to make, where it's like, you didn't take any time between relationships. You didn't take any time between going from one girl and then just jumping right into it with the next. And what it's saying is like, you need, and it's not just for guys, it's for girls too. You need that time to where you really shouldn't, as a young person, or even, you know, whatever, middle-aged people that, you know, maybe got divorced or whatever. You need time in between. You need time to discover yourself. To like, especially if you've been in a relationship for a long period of time. Now take that time to be like, okay, who am I now? And, you know, you get these people who are like, well, I didn't like who I was before my relationship, and I don't want to be that person again. It's like, dude, you're not that person anymore. Right. You have gone now years or months or whatever the case may be, and you have all those experiences under your belt. You are a different person. What might be beneficial is you take some time to see that person, meet that person, talk with that person, and get to experience and look at life through that person's eyes, because you're now more mature, you're more smarter, and you have, you know, again, those experiences under your belt. Kind of, you know, embrace that person before just, you know, either staying in a relationship or just jumping right into the next. Self-discovery is like the most important thing. And even if you are in a relationship, being with someone that understands the importance of that self-discovery, that even as we are growing together in this relationship, we're growing as a person, and giving that person, in, you know, your spouse or your partner, that time to go be on their own, or, you know, go, like we talked about in the last episode, take time for a spiritual journey, take time to go out and go out in the wilderness and just hike by yourself, just be alone. You know, giving them that personal space to do that is important. So yeah, definitely. That fear of being alone, that fear of abandonment, all those things that we talked about really deny you that chance to really find out who you are. Yeah. And you need to take that leap of faith of like, I'm just going to do it. I'm going to be alone and I'm going to find out who I am. And freaking million times out of 10, you'll probably really like that person, or maybe be surprised, like, oh my God, I didn't think I was capable. I didn't know who that person was. So
that's why I'm a big believer in shadow work and digging deep into your toxic traits, because a lot of times we can get very hyper focused in, oh my God, I was in this relationship and this person was like this and like that. What kept you in that relationship? What is it that caused you to be okay in that situation? And a lot of times you need to really get to know yourself and know your own toxic traits to be able to see why you were stuck in this cycle. And at the end of the day, when you leave a relationship or a situation like this where you're codependent, or you decide to work on this and heal and try to better the situation, what you need to do is work on you. You cannot work on the other person. I guess if you want to take anything away from everything that we've just said, you're not responsible for anybody else. At the end of the day, that's what it is. You have to work on yourself. You need to take responsibility of yourself. Everything else will take care of itself. And if it doesn't, that's their problem. Yeah. And you have to be okay with accepting that. I'm speaking more from the person that is dependent on. The codependent person needs to figure out how to be alone, you know?
Do shit on your own.
Also for the person that is dependent on.
Yeah.
Be okay with being alone, because obviously you're okay with bad company.
Yeah, you're okay with that person needing you and being attached to you.
And again, I'm not saying that the other person's bad. I think everybody has their reasons for doing what they do. You know,
everyone's equally
we all have trauma in some way.
Responsible for it.
Exactly. We all play a part in all of our relationships. You know, from our personal relationships, our friendships, our work, our everything.
Yeah.
Our neighbors. You know, all of it. We all play a part, and we're all responsible for what part we play.
Yeah.
So,
again, it's the people that don't want to do the work to like address these things, either with themselves or with their spouse or whatever. They're just like, that's hard. We have to talk about it.
Yeah.
Or maybe we have to go to therapy. Like, I don't want to do all that. Like,
I'm just saying, like we told our friend the other day, if you want to avoid, 2-3 years of therapy, you just do some plant medicine. I'm just saying.
You can get that shit done in a weekend, bro.
Dude,
we'll go out to Joshua Tree. We'll get it done.
It's and talk about a journey alone. Like, yeah. God, we need to make an episode on that because it's such a beautiful journey, but it is something you take.
Yeah, it's nothing you don't take it lightly.
Even though there's people there, you're doing this.
Yeah.
Like, this is something between you and whatever it is that you believe in, the universe, God, like the Holy Spirit, whatever.
Whatever you believe in,
this is a journey that you are going to walk alone and you are going to feel it.
Yeah.
And it's not pretty, but I mean, I'm just saying, this is why I'm a huge believer in like shadow work. If you don't know what that is, it's basically going into your dark side and realizing that we're all kind of messed up and we all have tendencies of being dependent or codependent. So,
but that's for another episode.
Yeah.
But yeah, we're all done with this one here. Thank you guys so much for listening in on this one. Again, if you have any comments, questions, definitely reach out to us on whatever platform you're listening to this on. We would love to hear back from you guys. I apologize. My spouse didn't do a Would You Rather. She said she was going to have it ready. I'm just putting the blame on her. Wow. We both said it, but I like
because he's so dependent on me doing everything.
Yeah, I depended on you to have that today, and you didn't. So. But we'll have it for next week. We'll get that posted up. So, again, guys, thank you so much. Have a rest of a beautiful, beautiful day.
Yes. Bye.